Hello everybody and welcome to the Friday edition of Video Clips. Remember, my book, COVID Operation, What Happened, Why It Happened, and What's Next is available if you live in the United States. You can call our office, 614-841-7700. You can email me about anything that's going on. Our conference is coming up. Chronic fatigue class, Cancer 201, psychological support groups, all kinds of things going on. WellnessForumHealth.com, the website, Pam Popper at MSN.com, MakeAmericansFreeAgain.com. Get involved with us. We are the people that are making things happening, and everybody wants to jump on a train that's going someplace with a good end in sight. So join us, all right? Stay in touch with us. Take classes from us. Build a career with us. Lots going on at Wellness Forum. All right, so I'm going to talk about kids today. The new normal, according to State House News, has been especially cruel to Ohio's children. Students are required to wear face coverings throughout the day to attend public school due to mandatory mask orders from Governor Mike DeWine. This means children are in face masks for up to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. In addition, children are kept apart from peers and are unable to socialize at school, missing out on fundamental social development. Each district issues its own consequences for those who don't wear face coverings properly. Ironically, one school has junior high students writing the preamble to the Declaration of Independence as punishment for mask violations. That's rich, isn't it? Tri-County North Local School District near Dayton also threatens middle school students with Saturday school and suspension. This after students lowered their masks to take a drink or catch their breath. Our children were not defiant, nor were they reminded to pull them up the day that they were given the punishment, said one of the parents on social media. The post was made on the Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom Facebook page. They're good, respectful kids, students, athletes that needed a breath, or in one child's case, a drink of water. A junior high boy with allergies and breathing difficulties was ordered to write the Declaration of Independence for pulling his mask beneath his nose for some air, said the boy's mother. Our son has missed 3 days of school for allergies because he couldn't breathe with his face covered, said the child's mother. She explained to school administrators that her son has allergies, but they refused to relent. The principal just told me the process will be, because my son is not going to complete the assignment, he will be served a detention by the teacher. When he doesn't serve the detention, the principal will issue a Saturday school. When he doesn't attend that, he will be given 1 day of school suspension, of which we can appeal, and we will do so. The parent said she also contacted the Preble County Department of Health and is scheduled to speak at an upcoming school board meeting. 2 other middle schoolers also violated the mask policy. Our daughter received the same punishment, and she's nothing like me because I wouldn't have done it. I told her I would fight for her, but she was in fear of losing her 7th grade trip, said her mother. I feel as if she was bullied. I personally wanted her to write the Second Amendment so they knew where I stood. She has bad allergies and stayed home the next day due to this teacher. A third student who had his writing hand in a cast was served the same punishment, and the teacher told him to write it with his other hand, said the parent. At another school, West Liberty Salem Local School District, students with approved mask exemptions are shamed and isolated throughout the school day. West Liberty Salem Superintendent Craig Hissong confirmed that mask-exempt students are isolated behind plexiglass at their desks and kept apart from other students as much as possible throughout the school day. A civil lawsuit that seeks to overturn Ohio's mask mandate in K-12 public schools has been transferred out of Putnam County Common Pleas Court to Franklin County at the request of the Department of Health Director Lance Himes, who is an attorney, by the way, not a doctor. And of course, the reason why they want it in Franklin County is because they know that they can control the outcome there. So that's a great way to treat children, great moments in public health, and that's going on right here in Ohio in schools every day. And this is why I have said to parents, get your children the heck out of these schools, all right? What are you doing sending a child into this environment? And I frankly don't have a lot of patience with homeschooling. It's hard, and I work and I do this. There is always a way around it. We have a big homeschool resource center on our website. We have private coaches to help you. Get your children the heck away from this. It's unsafe, all right? No child should ever be exposed to this. These kids are going to be in therapy for years once this is all over. Now, as a solution to this, here's something I think is great. I call on every church in the United States of America. We are ignoring our most important mission field right here in every home in the U.S. Our school-age children are suffering, and we as a nation cannot stand by and allow this to happen. Church, you are a solution. Our churches have Sunday school classrooms, which include the necessary materials to deliver instruction. My own small town church has a children's pastor for small children, student ministries pastor for older students, college program, worship and sports pastor, music and physical education, and lead church pastor. It also includes an outside area for outdoor activity and recess. Oh, I almost forgot, a huge gym for sports. Churches already know how to do the due diligence with background checks and fingerprinting for children's safety. Identify and recruit your congregation. Teachers, psychologists, restaurant owners, farmers, artists, bakers, doctors, lawyers, school administrators, etc. Every church has a wealth of skills and knowledge in which to glean from. In fact, many churches have put together institutions of higher learning. Heck, Harvard was established by the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1636. Church, you are uniquely capable of meeting this demand for our nation's children. Open your doors, even for a small group. Help parents with distance learning, homeschooling, starting a charter, Christian school, or any other type of schooling you and the parents of the students you teach deem necessary. Call your congregations with their wealth of background knowledge to help parents with educating their children, teaching reading, writing, math, physical education, art, music, true science, and history with an emphasis on the Constitution. Don't require masks, which is child abuse, social distancing, or temperature taking. Focus on the golden rule. Grade children on how much they show love to their neighbor. Test for smiles and happiness, and only intervene to increase those two areas. Include everyone. Students with disabilities are not only welcome, but are a very vital aspect to every classroom. You help me, and I will help you. Teach older students to help out the younger ones. Teach younger students to look up to their older role models. And last but not least, grab them and hug them every day. Parents, if the churches don't welcome you, go to them and tell them you need their help. When they help, don't just drop off your children. Glad someone else is going to assume your burden. It's your responsibility to work with them and help with your children and or children's education. You now know how difficult and vitally important it is to educate in a fun and loving way. And this is from a woman by the name of Diana Dreiss, I think, or it's a quote, let the little children come by Diana Dreiss. I don't know who wrote this, but it is a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I totally agree that the churches should step up, can step up, have the facilities to step up, and do something about this and get these kids out of these dystopian, god-awful science fiction movie type places they're calling schools. I don't know about you, but that first piece I read makes me livid. Livid. What are you doing sending your kids into this environment? All right, so ministers, church members, congregations, mobilize and help. We'll help. We have resources. Let us help. pambopper@msn.com. All right, so while we're on the subject, I think it's always good to finish with data. So this is research from a number of different studies that looks at the risk of children going to school. Now, you heard how I started, right? Okay. It's evident that school-age children can be infected by the virus. It's extremely rare for them to become seriously ill, and the risk of dying as a result of infection is almost zero. Not impossible, not non-existent, but almost non-existent. The relevant issue is therefore how much children's contribution to the spread of COVID-19 to adults by themselves or other kids is really going on. In other words, you cannot justify all this nonsense to keep the kids from infecting each other. The only possible justification you could have is that there was some danger that these kids were going to be carriers and go home and infect their parents and grandparents and everybody around them. A report last month, COVID-19 in Children and the Role of School Settings in COVID-19 Transmission by the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control analyzes evidence from many countries and throws light on the question. Some key conclusions that it reaches. And the first thing is, overview of outbreaks and transmission in child care school settings experienced from member states. In summary, clusters in educational facilities were identified in several of the 15 reporting countries. However, those that occurred were limited in number and size and were rather exceptional events. Several countries specifically said they had no indication that school settings played a significant role in the transmission of COVID-19. Secondary transmission in schools, either from child to child or child to adult, was perceived to be rare. Countries where schools had reopened by the time the survey stated that they had not seen an increase in cases in these settings. So if it's true that this transmission problem is huge, then you would expect that as the schools started to reopen in Europe that you would see transmission and a case count increasing. Hasn't happened. Second category, overview of outbreaks and transmission in school settings, evidence from the literature. What is the evidence of transmission between children within the school setting? The conclusion from these investigations is that child-to-child transmission in schools is uncommon and not the primary cause of SARS-CoV-2 infection of children whose infection onset coincides with the period during which they are attending school. What is the evidence of transmission from children, students, to adults, teacher, staff within the school setting? Where COVID-19 in children was detected and contacts followed up, no adult contacts in the school setting have been detected as SARS-CoV-2 positive during the follow-up period. The conclusion from these investigations is that children are not the primary drivers of SARS-CoV-2 transmission to adults in the school setting. So they're in the same room with the teachers, in the same building with the administrators, and they're not spreading it there. What is the evidence of transmission from adults, teacher, staff, to children, students within the school setting? While there is evidence of transmission from adults to children in household settings, there is little evidence of this occurring within the school setting, which would be an argument to get the kids the heck out of the house and into the school without all this nonsense that I talked about, right? Well, that would make too much sense. What is the evidence of transmission between adults, teacher, staff within the school setting? The conclusion from these investigations is that adults are not at higher risk of SARS-CoV-2 within the school setting than the risk in the community or household. So the teachers who are saying, please don't send me to work, I don't want to go back, it's not safe, ridiculous, okay? What is the effect of school openings on transmission to the community household? There is limited evidence that schools are driving transmission of COVID-19 within the community. However, there are indications that community transmission is imported into or reflected in the school setting. There was one outbreak in Israel after school reopening. However, the sequence of infection was not reported. Although Ireland closed schools relatively early in the epidemic, data there suggests schools would be a minor source of infection for children. An analysis of the probable origin for transmission of COVID-19 infection and outbreaks that have involved children in Ireland indicated that the most common setting was the home, followed by workplaces, travel, and residential institutions, with none of the childhood cases linked to outbreak in schools. All right, evidence from EU, EEA countries that kept pre- and primary schools daycare open or reopened schools earlier. The EDCD report includes the following information. Iceland kept both children in childcare institutions and primary schools open through the spring term, and the rates of SARS-CoV-2 in children under 15 remained low compared to the rates in older age groups. Physical distancing rules did not apply to childcare institutions and primary school children. Similarly, the Netherlands did not see a sudden increase in their reproductive number or detect significant outbreaks when primary schools and childcare facilities opened on 11 May, with moderately high notification rates at national level. Children up to and including 12 years did not have to keep 1.5 meters apart from each other or from adults, and this measure was applied in childcare and primary education settings. Children aged 13 to 18 did not have to physically distance from one another. So, not only are these places opening earlier, they're not doing social distancing and all that sort of thing. It's coming out fine. Denmark reopened childcare and primary education on 15 April with moderately high overall notification rates at national level, did not report any increase in the reproductive number or detect important school outbreaks. Denmark recommended splitting classes into smaller groups, keeping 2 meters between children, hand hygiene, and teaching more classes outside. Comparison between Sweden and Finland. As in other areas, some of the most useful evidence involves Sweden, which never closed school for children under 16. Not ever. In July, its public health authority published a report, English version here, comparing COVID-19 in children between Sweden and Finland, where almost all physical school attendance was stopped from mid-March to mid-May. Key findings. Closing schools had no measurable effect. There is no difference in the overall incidence of the laboratory-confirmed COVID-19 cases in the age group 1 to 19 years in the two countries, and the number of laboratory-confirmed cases did not fluctuate with school closure or change in testing policy in Finland. No effect. Closure or not of schools had no measurable direct impact on the number of laboratory-confirmed cases in school-aged children in Finland or Sweden. Transmission by children seems low. Outbreak investigations in Finland have not shown children to be contributing much in terms of transmission. In the contact tracings in primary schools in Finland, there have been hardly any evidence of children infecting other persons. The Swedish comparison of number of reported cases among staff in daycare and primary school to number of cases in other professions does not show any increased risk for teachers. This also indicates that the role of children in propagating this infection is likely to be small. Various papers on contact tracing have also found that children rarely are the first case in family clusters. Impact of school closures on the health and well-being of children. So opening the schools, closing the schools makes no difference. Social distancing makes no difference. They're not infecting each other. They're not infecting teachers. Teachers aren't infecting them. But here's what happens when you close the schools. A number of organizations have identified various negative impact on children's well-being, learning opportunities, and safety caused by school closures. These range from the interruption of learning and the exacerbation of disparities in mental health issues to an increased risk of domestic violence. The negative impacts particularly affect children from vulnerable and marginalized population groups. Other health aspects, both physical and mental, also need consideration. For many students living in poverty, schools are not only a place for learning, but also for healthy eating, and therefore researchers warn that school closures will exacerbate food insecurity. Research has highlighted that the active social life that children aged 2 to 10 years have at school helps them to learn from peers and has a positive impact on their personality and sense of identity, while disruptions of close peer relationships have been associated with depression, guilt, and anger in children. Furthermore, school and extracurricular activities provide structure, meaning, and a daily rhythm for children and youth. For those suffering from anxiety and depression, the loss of such activities can worsen symptoms and reinforce social withdrawal and feelings of hopelessness. Conclusions. The evidence shows that concerns about recommencing physical school attendance are misplaced, at least if moderate social distancing measures not requiring mask wearing and only for child-adult contact are mandated. It also seems pretty clear that the original decisions by almost all European countries to close schools were, in retrospect, ill-judged measures that caused more harm than good, at least in relation to children under 16 years old. Now here's what I'm going to do, because I know everybody's going to want this. I'm going to post this document at WellnessForumHealth.com. WellnessForumHealth.com. Go to the website. You'll have to scroll down to find it. Don't email me and tell me you can't find it. You can find it. Scroll down. Okay, you'll find it. You can also find our conference information there as well. So I'll post it there. And remember, if you want the Forbidden COVID Chronicles, you got to subscribe to the newsletter. So pampopper@msn.com. All right, that does it for today and for the week. Pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it and learning from it. I will be back to you next week with more news.